Long hailed as one of the best narratives ever told in a video game, it always felt like a live-action adaptation for The Last of Us was an inevitability. The question surrounding a Last of Us adaptation wasn't if it would get one, but what form it would take and whether or not it could possibly do justice to the source material. When it was announced that HBO had a Last of Us television series in development, it felt like a perfect match. The first Last of Us game is incredibly beloved, and it felt important that the people in charge of adapting it for TV shared the same love and respect for the game. When Craig Mazin of Chernobyl fame and the original game's creative director Neil Druckmann were revealed as showrunners for the series, it felt like the absolute perfect people to helm the project. From his time on Chernobyl, Mazin brought experience and a history of outstanding storytelling in the medium of television. Also, having the original creator so involved in the adaptation seemed like a blessing, as Druckmann's passion and understanding of the IP could not be questioned. In today's current landscape, where oftentimes those in charge of adapting a story to TV are apathetic or actively dislike its source material, it felt refreshing having someone connected to the source material be so involved in the adaptation. The love and passion for the game can be seen all throughout the show, as even though some changes to the story were made, it stayed true to its themes and characters. You can see this love in the form of Easter eggs from the game, sprinkled throughout, from the inclusion of the original voice actors for Joel, Troy Baker, and Ellie, Ashley Johnson, being given roles in the show as an acknowledgement for what they have done for the franchise. Baker and Johnson are extraordinary in the games, and are a massive part of what makes the characters so special. Seeing them being given the respect they deserve felt great, and really created a positive atmosphere surrounding the show. I never actually played the original game, but had already experienced its story. Maybe it's because I grew up with an older brother, and instead of playing story-based games, I would watch them as I sat beside my brother, fully enraptured in the story and experiencing it alongside him, as if I were playing it myself. So when The Last of Us came out in 2013, instead of playing it, I opted to watch Let's Plays of it on YouTube. I honestly think this was a great way to first experience the story, as the game is incredibly cinematic. So going into HBO's adaptation, I knew what to expect and what the show was building towards. I knew just how good the show could be. I just had to wait and see if it would be able to rise to the task. And as we embarked on Oberyn Martell and Lyanna Mormont's, Joel and Ellie's adventure, the show proved that adaptations can still be faithful and achieve a high standard in today's media landscape. I think HBO's The Last of Us was an immense success that remains true to its original world, but tweaks things when necessary to make them more compelling for the medium of television. I have a ton of thoughts on the season and will be discussing them in detail for the duration of the video. Spoilers ahead.
Come on, baby girl. Come on, baby girl. I gotta get you up. Come on. Come on, wake up. Come on, baby girl. Come on.
2013's The Last of Us had one of the best opening sequences to a video game ever. And so HBO's version was immediately put to the test, as it had to measure up to such an iconic beginning. However, before they dive into the Sarah of it all, they try to enrich the world by starting off with a prologue of sorts, where a couple of scientists discuss the potential of fungus adapting and becoming a threat to humanity. The scene was incredibly ominous, and helped introduce first-time viewers to what this world will be up against.
To spread the infection to every last human alive by any means necessary. And there are no treatments for this, no preventatives, no cures. They don't exist. It's not even possible to make them.
With the talk show setting the tone, we then get to experience the pre-pandemic world through the eyes of Sarah Miller. They aged Sarah up slightly in the show, giving her a little more agency and also making her seem slightly less vulnerable. Slightly. We get to spend a little more time with Sarah in the show, as we see her start her day. We get to see how she interacts with Joel and her uncle Tommy, showing us a bit of their dynamic. Tommy seems to be a bit of a troublemaker and depends on his older brother Joel to look after him. Joel leads, Tommy follows. After leaving the house and finishing school, Sarah heads to the horologist's.
I'm also a horologist.
No shame in that, dear.
To fix her dad's watch as a birthday present. The show is great in these moments by subtly building the tension. As Sarah is going about her day, there is a constant air of suspense in the background, as the audience knows that it's only a matter of time before things get real. Sarah visits the Adlers, where it is revealed that based on their choice of cookies,
Raisin.
maybe they get what's coming to them. Despite his promise to get home early and bring a cake, Joel does neither, showing us that he is breaking promises right from the beginning. We get a sweet moment straight from the game, as Sarah gives Joel his present. The two cuddle on the couch as the day quietly comes to an end, finding comfort in each other's presence. Except, things are just starting. Joel gets a call from Tommy, who has been locked up from getting in a bar fight. Feeling compelled to look out for his brother, Joel goes to bail him out, but not before tucking Sarah into bed. Sarah wakes several hours later, and this is where things start to really ramp up. In what is no doubt terrifying, Sarah wakes to find herself alone, with sounds and sights telling her that all is not well. Unwittingly, she tries to bring a poor doggo to his death as she enters the Adler's house. She comes upon a frightful scene, as she is chased back outside. Tommy and Joel roll up just in time for Joel to save the day and conk the old lady in the head. They get in the car and peace out. Now the car scene in the game was one of my absolute favorite, as the player is controlling Sarah, helplessly sitting in the back as she watches the chaos outside and her father and uncle wrestle with the situation. The show is able to capture this feeling as the audience is in Sarah's seat, terrified not knowing what will happen next. The car scene also does a lot to further explore and develop the characters. When they come across a family on the side of the road, Tommy's first instinct is to pull over and help them out, where Joel's is to ignore them, looking out for his own family. And as is their relationship at this point, Tommy does what his brother wants. We also get a quiet yet striking moment with Sarah, as she asks how people were getting sick.
You're saying it's mostly people in the city.
You'd have to go a lot, right?
When it's mentioned that people got sick by going into the city, she thinks about how she was in the city earlier that day, wondering if she somehow got infected during that time. Joel and Tommy are oblivious to this little panic attack she is having, and I think it is a great moment that allows the audience to further empathize with Sarah and share her fear. The car scene comes to an end as a plane comes crashing down, bringing us to the next phase of the sequence. Having hurt her ankle, Joel is forced to carry Sarah as they try to escape the chaos and get to safety. Joel keeps telling Sarah to keep her eyes on him in an attempt to save her from some of the trauma of the sites that they are surrounded by, but it only works so well. There's something so incredibly heartbreaking about this, as a father is trying to do everything he can to shield his daughter from the horrors of the world, only for it to be an impossible task. They are chased by an infected before seemingly reaching safety, as a soldier guns down their pursuer. Your heart drops into your stomach as you realize the soldier has been ordered to execute them, taking no chances with the infection. Joel shouts in confused desperation as the soldier fires upon them.
We're not sick. Sir, we are not sick!
Just before the soldier can finish off Joel, Tommy comes to his rescue, just in time, but unfortunately, too late for Sarah. Sarah ended up getting shot, and is bleeding out, completely terrified as she is cradled by her father. Pedro Pascal is phenomenal, as he is able to convey Joel's desperation to save Sarah, and the hopelessness knowing that there's nothing that he can do. It feels just as brutal as it did in the game, as you feel Joel's sorrow. This was the first moment the show had to match, and in my opinion, it more than met the challenge.
They're working on a cure.
I've heard this before.
And whatever happened to me is
It's the key to finding the vaccine. That's what this is. We've heard this a million times. Vaccines, miracle cures. None of it works.
Jumping forward in time 20 years, we see what the world has become, and what day-to-day life looks like for the survivors. We see how cold Joel has become over the years, as he burns the corpse of a young child, seemingly devoid of any emotion. For him, it's just another day in the QZ. It's clear that after Sarah's death, Joel went down a bit of a dark path, with him and his partner Tess both having an edge to them.
No, I promised Robert that you wouldn't hurt him. But I would very much like for you to hurt him.
Later on, Tess even says that they are not good people. They are willing to do what they need to survive, crossing any moral quandary they need without hesitation. However, Joel's need to protect and look out for his family has stayed with him over the years, as he is concerned for Tommy as they haven't heard from him in some time. Taking matters into their own hands, Joel and Tess set out to find a truck battery so they can travel outside the QZ and find Tommy. Their supplier turned out to be double dipping, and was trying to sell his battery to both them and the Fireflies. When they go to confront him, they find the aftermath of a firefight, with Marlene, a one-eared girl, and Ellie standing in the wake. Where I felt instantly convinced in Pascal's performance as Joel, it took me a little longer to warm up to Bella Ramsey's portrayal of Ellie. She wasn't doing a bad job by any means, but for whatever reason, her first scenes where she is locked up by the Fireflies didn't fully click with me. She has me convinced and invested by the end of the episode, and I think Ramsey's work in the later part of the season is absolutely phenomenal, but I thought it was worth noting my initial feelings. Having been injured, Marlene can no longer escort Ellie to the Fireflies' medical facilities, and so she enlists Joel and Tess to get Ellie there in her stead. With the promise of a brand new truck battery, Joel and Tess agree to take Ellie with them. As they wait to head out, we get a short scene between Ellie and Joel, as Ellie is looking for assurance that everything will be alright.
But you know where to go. So we're gonna be okay.
She's never been out of the QZ before, and is no doubt scared. She is being vulnerable here, and it feels like the start of her relationship with Joel. It's also where I start buying more into Ramsey's performance. It doesn't take long for complications to arise, as they are caught sneaking out of the safe zone and are tested to see if they are infected, a test that Ellie fails. Now knowing that Ellie is infected, Joel and Tess want to turn around, feeling like they've been tricked, but Fedra has already been alerted, and they have no choice but to flee into the city. Once they've had the chance to find shelter, Joel and Tess debate what to do with Ellie. Tess seems much more open to going forward, citing that Ellie survived the night without turning, while Joel doesn't care, believing that it is a matter of time. When Ellie tells them that she is immune and she is being moved to a facility to try and find a cure, Joel is even more skeptical. Hardened by the world and lacking faith in the idea that the world can be saved, he dismisses her. However, to Tess, it doesn't matter if Ellie is a miracle cure or not, so long as they get their battery. With that settled, they continue on. I will also note that at this point, it definitely feels like Tess has already started to believe a little bit, despite what she says to get Joel on board. As they move through the city, we get to see the destruction and overgrowth that has enveloped it. We get to see some cool things like the infected doing the wave, before we enter the museum. The museum fight with the clickers is exhilarating and incredibly intense. I feel like the show did a good job capturing the danger of the cauliflower heads.
We gathered together a small army of people to work on how to get the clickers right. And getting the clickers right means that people who have played the game will go, that's it.
Seeing Joel and the crew sneaking around and trying to fight off the clickers was a great scene. After they have survived the encounter, we see that Ellie was once again bit. Initially, I didn't think it was necessary for Ellie to get bit again, but upon further reflection, I think it helps to hammer home the point later in the episode when they compare her bite to Tess's, showing the difference between the two despite happening at the same time.
This is real. Josh is fucking real.
Both for the audience's benefit and the characters. Even though it's not explicitly mentioned here, Tess seems more on edge after the encounter, not willing to listen to Joel's negative chatter. When they reach the drop-off point, something is amiss. They find that all of the Fireflies have been killed. As they search the area for some clue on what happened and what to do next, Tess becomes increasingly animated, leading Ellie to realize that she was bit. At first, Joel is unwilling to accept this, shutting down somewhat. Tess then tries to show him that Ellie is the real deal, and that he has to see things through to the end. Their presence is alerted to the infected, and they have almost no time to get out of there before things are overrun. Tess stays behind to buy them some time, and before Tess goes boom, we are given another massive reveal. The infected aren't trying to bite people. They're trying to kiss them. Every time they jump on someone and it looks like they're trying to eat them, they're really just looking for a big smooch. Clickers, more like kissers. But in all seriousness, the fungus kiss given to Tess was pretty gross, and at the same time makes sense in a way, as the infected likely could already tell that Tess was bit, and it wanted to speed up the process of turning her. Still nasty though. After getting out of the city, Joel mourns Tess in his own way, by trying to ignore what happened. He keeps glaring at Ellie, effectively blaming her without coming out and saying it. Ellie's not having that shit though, and calls him out on it, telling him that Tess made her own decisions and her death is not Ellie's fault. They continue on as Joel comes to terms with why he is still going through with this instead of just turning back. Initially, he was doing it for a truck battery, but now he is still escorting Ellie because Tess believed in her immunity and asked him as a dying request. He viewed Tess as family, and him carrying out her wish despite what he wanted continues to show the importance he places on it.
But I made a promise to Tess, and she was like family.
It's also an interesting contrast with his final decision. It makes you wonder if Ellie explicitly asked him to let her die, would he have let her?
I'm satisfied. And you were my purpose.
Episode 3 is a bit of a left turn, as it spends the majority of the episode focusing on a pair of characters that we have yet to meet in the show, taking place years before our main story. Upon this realization, I was honestly pretty nervous that the episode would be underwhelming. It reminded me of seasons of The Walking Dead, where you would be following an interesting storyline with great characters for an episode, and the next week, instead of finding out what happened, you would be subjected to a completely random tertiary character doing something that you have no interest in. Looking at you, Morgan. However, I am pleased to say that I was proven wrong, as this episode was engaging the entire time, and could be argued as one of the best episodes of the season. It starts out by following Bill at the start of the apocalypse. A prepper, and what would be considered in our world to be a bit of a nut job, Bill has been waiting his entire life for the apocalypse. Hiding from the army, Bill starts living his best life, as he begins souping up his neighborhood and getting all of the supplies that he needs to live a comfortable life. He's so well set up that he can even enjoy dinner and a show. He is absolutely in his element, and you can feel his confidence and joy at the situation, seemingly content in his solitude. A few years later, his life changes forever, as he finds a man in one of his traps. A man named Frank. Initially hesitant and wanting Frank to leave immediately, he is eventually convinced to let Frank stay for a night. Throughout the night and their interactions, Bill's entire demeanor shifts. He is no longer self-assured and in his element. He now seems timid, soft-spoken, and almost a little afraid. Nick Offerman is tremendous, as he is able to convey this shift almost entirely through body language. There seems to be something in the air, as Frank is charming as ever, and Bill is wound tighter than a toy soldier. As Frank goes to the piano, Bill sings a song, showing a softer side to him and immense vulnerability.
So, who's the girl? Girl you're singing about?
There is no girl.
When the song ends, the two kiss. Bill and Frank are two very different people, but it is heartwarming to see them find comfort in each other. It seems like this is a part of himself that Bill has repressed for most of his life. So it is honestly kind of beautiful as Frank guides him and tells him that everything is going to be okay. The rest of the episode, we see the life the two share together, having squabbles like anyone else, but ultimately being there for each other and loving one another. This episode was criticized by some for having no zombies in it, and I think this completely misses the point of The Last of Us and a lot of zombie media in general. It's not about the zombies, it's about the people, and how, when put into a world filled with the horrors of an apocalypse, what do? How do they adapt? What in life is truly important? These are the types of questions that make an episode like this so engaging. After the end of the world, these two men find each other and share a life together. In normal circumstances, they would likely have never even met.
Are like polar opposites, but they have this really beautiful connection. And I wonder whether they would have had it if the world wasn't the way that it is in this show. And they complement each other.
But in this brutal world, they found love together. I think there's something beautiful and compelling about that. More to the merit of the episode is how its themes tie back to Joel and Ellie. When Bill was alone, he only had to worry about himself. He didn't care about losing anything because he had nothing to lose. But after Frank came into his life, he became scared.
I was never afraid before you showed up.
Now he had something, and he was scared of losing it. As he says in his letter to Joel, Bill and Joel are both protectors, willing to do anything to protect the ones that they love. Similarly, after his relationship grows with Ellie, Joel starts having panic attacks because he is so scared that something will happen to her. He let her in, and now he is afraid to lose her and go back to the nothingness. Bill is also faced with a decision similar to Joel's, as Frank asks him to let him die. At first, Bill is resistant, because Frank has become his entire world, and if Frank dies, what's the point in living? He can't go back to how he was before. He has changed. But Bill relents, and gives in to what Frank wants, loving him in the way that he wants to be loved. He could have continued to resist, but that would have been going against Frank's wishes. Joel's final decision is similar in nature, but he makes a different choice.
Because I think she'd want to do what's right. And you know it.
Bill and Frank dying together is a much happier ending than they get in the game, as Frank ends up hanging himself after being bit, driven away from Bill's overbearing personality, and Bill is destined to live out his days alone. My only criticism about the episode isn't really to do with the episode itself, but the fact that we didn't get to see Bill interact with Joel and Ellie like we got to in the game.
So, why don't you fix one of these cars?
Oh my god, you're a genius. I mean, the whole time, why on earth hadn't I thought about fixing one of these cars?
Okay, don't be a dick.
They had some fun interactions, and it's a bit of a shame we never got to see them on the show. Also, 2 Arby's references in this episode, which seems kind of random.
And this is not an Arby's.
Or am I the bad guy? I don't know what you're waiting on, man. The answer's easy. I am the bad guy because I did a bad guy thing.
After stocking up on supplies at Bill and Frank's, Joel and Ellie are on to the next leg of their journey, traveling in style. You can see the signs of their relationship changing as they grow to care more for each other, and Joel steps more and more willingly into his role as a protector. When making camp, Joel mentions it's not the infected that they have to worry about, but it's the people. It's clear he has spooked Ellie, as she looks for reassurance that they won't be found. Joel assures her that they are safe, but he is no longer able to go to sleep, instead opting to stand watch for the entire night. I really appreciate this moment because it feels subtle. In the moments where Ellie expresses fear or doubt, I feel like that is when Joel sees Sarah most in her, and he wants to protect Ellie and tell her everything will be alright, something he wasn't able to do with Sarah. As they enter the city, they come across a man seemingly injured in the street, asking for help. Joel doesn't even stop for a second, instead getting ready to ram him. This isn't Joel's first time around the block, and so he knows all the tricks in the book. Chaos breaks out as once it is clear that the car won't stop, the ambushers come out of the woodwork, opening fire and using their traps to bring the truck to an abrupt stop. A gunfight breaks out, and just when it seems like the situation is handled, Brian comes in through the back door. Brian likes to talk, because when he's got Joel on the ropes, he makes it clear what he's going to do. However, his tune changes pretty quick when Ellie comes from behind and shoots him.
We can trade with you guys. We can be friends, I didn't know.
Now, I think the ambush scene in the show was great, but I think I prefer the game's version a bit more. In the game, the ambushers are on top of them before they can even get out of the car, and the situation feels even more desperate as Joel and Ellie fight for their lives. Also, when Ellie saves Joel in the game, the player couldn't see Ellie walking up, so Joel fighting for his life felt more intense, and with the eventual gunshot coming as more of a surprise. Also, Joel's reaction to Ellie having to save him is very different. In the show, he is a lot kinder to Ellie and doing his best to be comforting. In the game, he is a lot colder and scolds her, leading to her confronting him a bit. I think they changed this because the show needed to get people to buy into their relationship a little bit quicker, as they don't really have the same amount of time as they had in the game. An understandable change, and the show version is still good, but just makes me wish we had a bit more time with Joel and Ellie. With Joel and Ellie making a big splash in Kansas City, we then cut back to follow a different pair of survivors that are even more wanted. Henry and Sam are excellent in the show, and their story is absolutely heartbreaking. I think it's interesting that the show decided to age Sam down and make his character deaf. It makes him even more vulnerable and reliant on his brother, not just for survival, but also for communication. I think this change worked really well. It makes the character's untimely end even more tragic. Also, Sam's actor, Kayvon Woodard, was really great, especially for a child actor. Henry and Sam have been hiding out for some time before Joel and Ellie enter the city. They see the commotion and realize that these newcomers could be the key to their escape. When they come upon Joel and Ellie in the night, despite a mixed first impression, the pairs both agree to work together. As they make their way to the tunnels to execute their escape plan, we learn more about their story and why they are on the run. After learning that Henry was a collaborator, Joel was initially disgusted. But seeing Sam, he walks his comments back, empathizing with why Henry would do something like that. Henry's story is extremely relevant to Joel's, as he talks about how he gave up Kathleen's brother as a means of procuring the necessary medicine to save Sam's life. Sam was everything to Henry, and so he was willing to do anything to save him, even sacrificing someone else's life. However, upon self-reflecting, Henry acknowledges that what he did was wrong. When they make it to the other side, seemingly in the clear, they start getting shot at. Turns out there's a sniper, and Joel takes action as he manages to get to the house and take him out. But he is too late as the sniper already alerted Kathleen and her crew. Joel takes up the mantle of Sniper Elite as he shoots the driver of the semi, causing it to explode and unearth hordes of infected. Joel acts as Ellie's guardian angel as he shoots any infected that gets close to her. This scene was one where even in the show, it just felt so much like a video game. It also showcased some great acting from Pascal when Ellie entered the car and had an infected follow her. His fear is etched on his face as he is hopeless to help her. It feels like the first sign of the fear that will start to consume him over the next few episodes. Henry, Sam, and Ellie manage to escape the fray, but not before they are stopped by Kathleen. Kathleen wastes no time and shoots Henry and Sam, getting the revenge she so desperately craved. Huh? Oh, my apologies. It seems there's been a correction. Let me try that again. They're stopped by Kathleen, who doesn't shoot them for some reason, as she waits to be mauled by an infected. Why didn't you shoot them? Some weird staging in this scene, as it really did feel like Kathleen just pointed the gun at them for a strangely long time. Well, as Kansas City is overrun by infected, our heroes quietly exit stage left. All alive, well, and not bitten. Right?
Did one of the zombies bite you? Me? No, I have a scratch.
Well, as it turns out, no. In the chaos, Sam was unfortunately bit on his lower leg. He is scared as he wonders if a person is still in there somewhere. Ellie tries to cure him, but it doesn't work. And when the sun rises, Sam has turned. He attacks Ellie, and Henry grabs the gun before Joel can. He hesitates as Sam mauls Ellie, not wanting to shoot his brother, not believing that he could have turned. Eventually, he shoots Sam. But seeing what he has done and knowing that Sam is dead, he sees no point in going on, and turns the gun on himself. This scene is equal parts incredible and heartbreaking. It feels so morbid, as Henry and Sam are snuffed out just like that. Even though Henry saved Sam multiple times, in the end he just prolonged the inevitable for a short time. Henry and Sam's deaths are sad, and add a level of tragedy to the story. To top it off, Ellie's final message to Sam was to apologize for failing him.
It's all I've ever done is fail her. Again and again.
You want me to take her?
I'm just gonna get her killed, I know it. I know it. I have to leave her.
Changed from the events of Kansas City, Joel and Ellie continue on their journey. Joel's trauma starts to bubble to the surface, as he starts having moments where he shuts down because he is so scared that something will happen to Ellie. He feels like he is becoming unfit to protect her, fearing that he will freeze up and get her killed. He has one of these moments as a community scouting patrol surrounds them, having a dog sniff them for infection. When Ellie isn't mauled by the Doge, it is revealed that the people that found them know Tommy. They bring Joel and Ellie back with them, and the two brothers are reunited. Joel assumes that the brotherly dynamic will go back to the way it was, with Joel calling the shots and Tommy falling in line. However, where Joel has remained in stasis all of these years, unable to grow or move past the trauma of Sarah's death, Tommy has changed. He has started to build a life of his own.
Would it be nice to have a moment here, maybe just for family?
Maria is family, actually.
As he found love with Maria and is going to be a father. He tells Joel that he can't go abandon them to go adventuring with him. It is a bit of a role reversal from the first episode, where Tommy was reliant on Joel, whereas now Joel needs Tommy's help. It's also worth noting that Joel's first move, even with his own brother, is to try and keep his walls up, saying that Tess is fine when Tommy asks about her.
So how's Tess?
She's fine. All right.
Good then.
Maria and Ellie spend some time together, where Maria warns her about Joel. It was clear during breakfast when Maria was staring pointedly at Joel that she thinks he is a dangerous man. She tells Ellie as much, who is not too interested in listening at the moment. Joel eventually opens up to Tommy, telling him about everything that's happened. It's one of the first times that Joel is truly being vulnerable, as he pulls down his walls and lets his brother in on all of his fears and insecurities. Haunted by the ghost of Sarah, Joel is convinced that he will lead Ellie to her death, and so he implores Tommy to take her the rest of the way. Seeing his brother so distressed and believing his story, Tommy agrees to go in his place. When Joel goes to tell Ellie about the change of plans, she already knows as she had been eavesdropping on them. Ellie gets emotional as she tells Joel about how everyone in her life has abandoned her one way or the other, and her ultimate fear of ending up alone. However, instead of hearing her out, Joel puts his walls back up and treats her coldly.
You're not my daughter. And I sure as hell ain't your dad. Now come dawn, we're going our separate ways.
Both Pascal and Ramsey are great in the scene, as they really give the audience a window into what the characters are going through. Joel is also trying to push Ellie away because he thinks it will be what is best for her in the long run. The next morning, Ellie is waiting in her room to see which Miller brother will come get her. When Tommy walks in, you can see her face fall for a second as she feels like she is being abandoned yet again. However, when they get to the stables, they find Joel is already there. Joel then says something very interesting.
You deserve a choice.
Interesting you should say that, Joel. Let's see if that comes back into play later on. Joel and Ellie then get a few easy days before reaching their next destination. They come upon a medical facility that had already been abandoned by the Fireflies. Instead of Fireflies, what they find instead are some troublemakers who attack them, stabbing Joel in the process. Joel is faced with the ultimate dilemma.
Do I take it out or do I leave it in? Do I take it out or do I leave it in?
And he chooses wrong. They escape, only for Oberyn to pull a Khal Drogo and fall from his horse, leaving Ellie to try and pick up the pieces.
Father, it's 2 minutes. Or 2 days. We don't give that up. I don't want to give that up.
Similar to how episode 3 was giving me some Walking Dead flashbacks, Left Behind gave me the same feeling. If anything, this instance felt a little more egregious, as we leave the current timeline on a cliffhanger as opposed to the transitional phase that preluded the Bill and Frank story. The Left Behind episode is based on a DLC of the same name for the game that I had never actually seen before. Even though this was completely new material for me, for most of the episode it wasn't really working, and I found myself a little bored. It just didn't really feel like a necessary detour, as truth be told, it doesn't really matter how Ellie was first bit. I also think this episode is hurt a bit in my estimations because we only have 9 total episodes, and Left Behind doesn't feel like it brings anything particularly relevant to the larger narrative. What I will say is that despite most of the episode being a little aimless, the ending feels incredibly powerful. As we see Ellie and Riley get bit, we get to see 2 young girls battle with their mortality in a very real way. They spent a lot of time talking about their futures, and even kissed, opening a new path that they could walk together, only for them to get bit and realize that they have no future, that none of their hopes or dreams matter anymore. The world isn't limitless, full of possibilities. It is so limited that it is suffocating. The 2 girls deal with this very differently, as Riley looks defeated as she tries to come to terms with their situation, and Ellie takes out her rage and anger on their surroundings. They ultimately decide to keep living for as long as they can, regardless of how hopeless things seem. The ending of this episode is so powerful that I think it undoes a lot of my problems with it.
Turns out he was murdered by this crazy man. And get this, that crazy man was traveling with a little girl.
I feel like the episode focusing on dealing with David and his crew is the strongest in the show. They managed to make David even creepier than he was in the game, making him a soft-spoken, Weasley kind of evil that only added to his creep factor. With Joel still recovering from being skewered, Ellie takes it upon herself to get them some food, and she goes hunting for deer. She manages to hit a deer.
Nice shot!
But things don't go exactly as planned, and she is forced to chase after it. However, she isn't the first to find her kill, as she comes upon David and James ready to take it for themselves. Ellie does her best to posture that she is part of a big group, taking control so that David sends James away to bring her medicine. We are then treated to a fantastic scene as Ellie and David converse. We learn a few things about David, like how he found God after the apocalypse, and that he was a teacher in his former life. 2 things which get recontextualized later in the episode, when we learn just what a monster David really is. As David talks about fate, we get a moment that drops your heart into your stomach, as David reveals that they lost one of their people to a man who was traveling with a young girl. There's just something so unsettling about his delivery, and the audience is immediately on high alert. David's actor, Scott Shepherd, is phenomenal throughout the entire episode, but this is one of his standout moments in my opinion, as David's facade is still mostly in place. When James returns, David lets Ellie go for the time being, even giving her the medicine. As David and James return to camp, there is an emphasis on the food. If you didn't already know the twist that they are cannibals, I think the show does a good job hinting at it without fully giving up the game. Once it is fully revealed, it feels like it was in front of the audience faces the whole time.
You're eating people, you sick fuck!
which is some pretty good storytelling. David also physically assaults a girl, which is deeply disturbing knowing how much he enjoys that. The next day, David and his crew head out to hunt for Joel and Ellie, with David being very adamant that Ellie is to be taken alive. Ellie sees them coming and does her best in the short time she has. She blocks the entrance to the basement and wakes Joel, arming him in the hopes that he will be able to defend himself should it come to that. She then mounts the horse and tries to lead the goons away from Joel. Apparently, James isn't a big fan of horses, as he kills Ellie's mount, sending her flying in the process. David heads back home, carrying his prize. The goons that are left behind are in for a rough go, as Joel summons every bit of energy he has to murder them one at a time. We get a brutal scene straight from the game, where Joel interrogates his prisoners, having them both point to their location on the map.
You're gonna point to where we are, and where your resort is. And it better be the exact same spot your buddy points to.
We really get to see how brutal Joel can be when it comes to protecting the ones he loves, willing to cross any moral boundary. In this moment, the audience is 100% on his side, as these are some pretty bad guys. But as Joel is threatening to pop off a kneecap, some people might hear a little voice in the back of their head wondering, is Joel a baddie? I also think the show's version of this feels way more brutal than the game's version did. As Joel is searching for Ellie, David has her locked in a cage. David goes full mask off as he reveals himself to be a pedo-cannibal sadist who wants to have Ellie by his side. Ellie breaks his fingers and finally tells him her name.
Tell them that Ellie is a little girl who broke her fucking finger!
After pissing David off, his plans change as Ellie is going to be dinner. They get her on the cutting board when Ellie reveals that she's infected.
I've been bitten, you stupid pricks! I'm tainted meat.
Really smart, as it gives her just enough time to catch them off guard and get away. It's then a game of cat and mouse, as David chases Ellie around the burning lodge. David continues to show himself to be the worst person imaginable.
I thought you already knew. The fighting is the part I like the most.
No! God, please, no! No!
As he and Ellie struggle, the show does a great job of making you feel Ellie's fear and desperation throughout the whole sequence. And it is because they were so effective in conveying Ellie's emotions in this moment that when she finally chops up David, it feels massively cathartic. When Ellie exits the lodge, she is in shock, still trying to process the trauma that she just underwent. When Joel comes up from behind, she initially struggles, terrified that someone else has come to hurt her, only for her to slowly realize that it is Joel and that she is safe. This moment feels so emotional, as Joe calls Ellie baby girl for the first time, something that he called Sarah.
Okay. It's okay, baby girl.
And Ellie's eyes still look glazed over, not fully there. This episode is easily Bella Ramsey's standout moment, as she was able to portray all of Ellie's various emotions throughout the episode brilliantly. I also love the sequence because it really puts Ellie in the hot seat. Joel isn't able to come and save her. It shows she has to rescue herself, because if she can't, she is done for. Ellie has seen some horrendous stuff before this, but this really feels like she has seen the worst that humanity has to offer, no doubt affecting her psyche for a long time.
Swear to me that everything you said about the Fireflies is true.
I swear.
After her experience with David, Ellie is a little more reserved. This sends Joel into full dad mode as he tries to cheer her up with ravioli and boggle. His efforts are unsuccessful, and he needs backup from a giraffe to achieve his goal. As they look on, almost having reached their end goal, Joel tells Ellie that they don't have to do this.
We don't have to do this.
What do you mean? What else are we supposed to do?
Nothing. We just go back to Tommy's. We forget about the whole damn thing.
He has let Ellie into his heart, and now she is the most important thing in his life. Finishing the mission doesn't mean anything to him, because Ellie is no longer cargo to him, and continuing will only put her in more danger. But for Ellie, this is much more, as it is something that she feels like she has to do.
After all we've been through, everything I've done, it can't be for nothing.
So many people have died trying to get her here, and she needs to see it through to the end. More than that, it has given her a sense of purpose, and she feels like doing this is something much larger than herself. It's a great scene that really conveys to the audience just where each of these characters are. After revealing that Joel tried to kill himself after Sarah died, Joel's walls are fully down with Ellie. His relationship with her has healed a wound that time never could. He feels like his purpose is to protect her, as he feels love for the first time in a long time. And now that he has it again, it is not something that he is willing to let go of.
It is not just about the beautiful parts of love. It's also about the dark side. It's about how everything wonderful and everything bad ultimately can start with love.
The Fireflies catch Joel and Ellie unawares, and when Joel comes to, Marlene is telling him that Ellie is being prepped for surgery.
He's going to remove it from her, multiply the cells in a lab, produce those chemical messengers. He thinks it could be a cure, Joel.
Cordyceps grows inside the brain.
I shouldn't have told you that.
Joel reads between the lines and deduces that Ellie won't survive the process and is ready to pull her out of there. To call back to what Joel said a few episodes earlier,
you deserve a choice.
I think both Joel and the Fireflies bungle this situation, which results in the tragedy that soon befalls humanity. Joel wants to make a choice for Ellie, to say to hell with the cure and everybody else and take her back with him to Tommy's. The Fireflies say that Ellie would probably choose to sacrifice herself for a cure, but is seemingly not something they are willing to risk, as it seems like Ellie was never made conscious again after being initially knocked out. I think if Marlene had told Ellie that finding a cure would result in her death, she would still go through with it. I also think if they did this and gave her a chance to talk with Joel, that this is what she really wanted to do, she may have been able to convince him to let her go in a similar vein to Bill and Frank. It's not certain, but what matters in all of this, and what is ignored by both Joel and Marlene, is giving Ellie the choice to make her own decision, and the power to employ her own agency. Alas, Ellie is not given a choice, and so Joel makes one for her. The ending to the original Last of Us is one of the best endings in video game history. The entire story has been building to this one moment, Joel's decision.
The thought experiment for the whole story is the unconditional love a parent feels for the child. And how far can you take the story to demonstrate what that means?
It split some of the fan base, with some empathizing with Joel and thinking he made the right decision, and others seeing his choice as nothing but selfish and villainous as he denies the world a cure and dooms them to an eternal hellscape. It almost feels surreal in the game as the player, regardless if they agree with Joel or not, as they are forced to massacre tons of people whose goal is nothing but noble. It asks the question, how far would you go to save a loved one? Would you do anything to save them? It is questions like this that have allowed the legacy of The Last of Us to endure all of these years. And I am sad to say, but Joel's decision and subsequent massacre of the Fireflies falls flat in the show. It feels like little more than a short montage of Joel killing people, robbing it of much of its impact. Joel is slowly walking through the building with no sense of urgency in this weird disassociative scene. The finale is easily the shortest episode in the series, so it feels odd that they seemingly rushed the most iconic and important moment of the entire story. I think they should have done more with it, making the audience feel like they are there in the moment with Joel as they witness him murder these people, constantly doubling down on his decision to the horror of the viewers. The version we get doesn't feel impactful, because it's this weird, detached, foregone conclusion instead of Joel actively making terrible decisions over and over again. I think this is also a good time to mention that I wish we got a little bit more time with Joel and Ellie together to build upon their relationship further. We don't get those character interactions during missions that really help to enforce their growing bond in the game. Also, of the 9 episodes, they only have considerable interactions in like 5.5 of them, with some episodes focusing on different relationships like Bill and Frank or Ellie and Riley. The 2 episodes before the finale see almost no interactions between the characters, as episode 7 is a flashback, and episode 8 sees the pair separated until the very end. This leaves episode 9 with a lot of work to do cementing their bond right before the climax. I am able to buy into their relationship on the show, but I could definitely understand if it didn't work for everybody, as they may have needed the extra little bit of time to get them there. In his killing spree, Joel kills a doctor. No, Joel! Don't do it! Not him, Joel! No doubt setting up a potential season 2, before getting Ellie and dipping. The rest of the episode plays out pretty faithfully to the game, which I think is to its benefit. We see Marlene try to stop Joel and talk him out of his decision. It cuts to a close-up of Joel driving, leaving the audience to wonder what he ultimately decided, only to hear Ellie waking up in the back seat. He tells her a bunch of lies.
Turns out there's a whole lot more like you. People that are immune. The doctors, they couldn't make any of it work. They've stopped looking for a cure.
And we cut back to him shooting and killing Marlene. Some great stuff that does justice to the game.
Please. Let me go. You'd just come after her.
Obviously, Joel's story is a little sus, and so while he is on cloud 9 as they make their way back to Tommy's, talking about Ellie and Sarah, Ellie is contemplating. With the commune in sight, Ellie comes out and asks him if everything he said was true. She needs closure, to know that she not only did what she set out to do, but that she can still trust Joel. And when pressed, Joel doesn't hesitate, promising that he's told the truth. We see Ellie react to his words before it cuts to black. Another iconic moment from the game that leaves so much up in the air and so much potential for a sequel.
We have definitely talked about seasons to come. We're ready to go and dive into more of the world of The Last of Us, no question.
Overall, HBO's adaptation of The Last of Us feels true to the source material while still making changes to better suit the medium of television. Working with such tremendous source material, The Last of Us had all the makings of an incredible show and managed to rise to almost every hurdle that it faced. It paid respect to the original and still managed to stand on its own. As word of mouth spread, the show saw a steady increase in viewership every week, even surpassing HBO's other hit series, House of the Dragon, in its final week. The Last of Us was always destined to get a live-action adaptation, and I am happy to say that I think the one that we have gotten has done justice to the game. It by no means is a replacement for the game, nothing ever will be, but it allows people to experience the same story in a new and interesting way. If I were to rank HBO's The Last of Us, I would give it a low 9. It will be interesting to see what season 2 of the show brings, considering the fan reaction to the game's sequel, The Last of Us Part 2. Having also watched Let's Plays of the second game, I think adapting it into television gives the showrunners a lot of opportunities to improve upon the storytelling in that game.
My philosophy on this show has always been, when should we deviate and when should we come back? If it's kind of the same or worse, we stay where the game is. If it's better, we deviate.
I personally don't think the second game comes close to the story of the first, and I know a lot of people have some very strong feelings about it, so it will no doubt be a difficult task in adapting it. Regardless, I am glad that more people got to experience the story of The Last of Us, and I'm excited for the potential of Season 2. If you somehow made it to the end of the video, I want to thank you for watching. If you enjoyed the video, it would mean a lot if you liked and subscribed. It really helps out the channel. Thank you for watching, and I hope to see you in the next video.